Before watching the video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and watch the video till the end. You will love my video. We need your support. America's most bizarre historical events you've never heard of. History is often told in broad strokes. We hear about the wars, the revolutions, the presidents, and the movements that shaped nations. But tucked away in the dusty corners of America's past are stories so bizarre, so unusual, that they sound more like myths than reality. And yet, they happened. Today, we're diving deep into America's strangest historical events. These aren't the textbook tales you memorized in school. No. These are the forgotten oddities, the unbelievable incidents that really did happen, and they reveal just how unpredictable, quirky, and downright weird history can be. Have you ever heard of the time America crowned its own emperor? A man who ruled San Francisco with no army, no treasury, but with the love of an entire city? Or the day in 1919 when a massive wave of molasses rushed through Boston, drowning people and horses in sticky chaos? And what about the Cold War moment when Pepsi briefly owned the world's sixth largest navy, trading soda for submarines? Or the eerie night when a town in Connecticut was convinced they were under attack, only to discover the enemy wasn't soldiers, but frogs? We'll uncover tales of witches who haunted families, phantom war experiments that supposedly made ships vanish, meat mysteriously raining from the sky, and even the day America accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb on itself. These stories are bizarre, hilarious, terrifying, and sometimes tragic. But most of all, they remind us that history is never as clean or straightforward as we think. Behind every serious headline and grand event are strange footnotes that make you shake your head and wonder, how is this even real? So buckle up, because this is not your usual history lesson. This is America's most bizarre historical events you've never heard of. Emperor Norton there. The Emperor of the United States. Let's start with one of the most legendary oddities of 19th century America. Emperor Norton, I. Joshua Abraham Norton, was a businessman in San Francisco during the mid-1800s. For a while, he was doing quite well, investing in real estate and enjoying prosperity. But after a disastrous rice investment in 1852 wiped out his fortune, Norton disappeared from the public eye. Then, in 1859, he reappeared with a declaration. In a letter published by a San Francisco newspaper, Norton proclaimed himself Norton, I, Emperor of the United States. Later, he would also add the title Protector of Mexico. What's bizarre isn't that a man declared himself emperor. It's that San Francisco went along with it. Locals adored him. He printed his own currency, which shops and restaurants actually accepted. He wore a blue military-style uniform given to him by the local army post, adorned with gold epaulets and a beaver hat decorated with feathers. He patrolled the streets daily, inspecting sidewalks and making proclamations about national policy, and while some laughed, most respected him. When he dined in restaurants, his meals were covered. Police once arrested him for vagrancy, but the outcry from citizens was so great that the chief of police apologized and released him. From then on, officers saluted him in the streets. Even stranger, some of Norton's crazy proclamations eventually came true. He called for the creation of a bridge connecting San Francisco and Oakland, decades before the Bay Bridge was ever built. He also demanded a tunnel under San Francisco Bay, what we know today as BART. When Norton died suddenly on January 8, 1880, at least 10,000 people lined the streets of San Francisco for his funeral, with some accounts saying up to 30,000. Newspapers across the nation published obituaries honoring His Imperial Majesty Norton Dars. What started as delusion became legend. To this day, Emperor Norton is remembered as the ruler who had no kingdom, but won the heart of a city. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919 Boston, Massachusetts, January 15, 1919. It was a crisp winter afternoon when residents heard what they thought was a thunderclap, or maybe even an explosion. But what followed was stranger than fiction. A massive storage tank containing over 2.3 million gallons of molasses had burst in Boston's North End. The result? A wave of sticky brown syrup, 25 feet high and moving at 35 miles per hour, tore. Through the streets, buildings were crushed. Horses were swept away, people were knocked off their feet and trapped in a gooey nightmare. In total, 21 people died and over 150 were injured. Rescue efforts were slow and painful because imagine trying to wade through knee-deep molasses in freezing January weather. The cause of the disaster was negligence. The storage tank had been poorly constructed by the Purity Distilling Company, and workers had even noticed it groaning and leaking weeks before the collapse. But no action was taken. The Great Molasses Flood has since become a mix of tragedy and dark comedy. Locals claimed that for decades afterward, on hot summer days, the streets of Boston still smelled faintly of molasses. It's a reminder that history isn't just about wars and politics, it's also about the strange accidents that no one could predict. The Pig War of 1859. Imagine a war breaking out between two nations over a pig. That's exactly what almost happened between the United States and Great Britain in 1859. On San Juan Island, located between Vancouver Island and Washington State, tensions were already high. Both Americans and British settlers claimed ownership of the land. The situation might have remained tense but peaceful, until one pig got hungry. A British pig, owned by a man named Charles Griffin, wandered into the garden of an American farmer, Lyman Cutler, and began eating his potatoes. Furious, Cutler shot the pig. This single act sparked outrage. The British authorities threatened to arrest Cutler, and American settlers demanded protection. Soon, U.S. troops under Captain George Pickett, yes, the same Pickett who later led Pickett's charge at Gettysburg, arrived on the island. The British responded by sending 3 warships. For a moment, war seemed inevitable. American soldiers dug trenches and aimed cannons. British warships pointed their guns at the shore, and all of this over a pig. Fortunately, cooler heads prevailed. Both sides eventually agreed to a joint occupation of the island until the border dispute could be resolved diplomatically. In 1872, an international commission ruled in favor of the United States, and the Pig War ended with only one casualty: the pig itself. It remains one of the strangest near wars in history. Pepsi's Cold War Navy. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union had plenty of military might, but very few Western luxuries. One thing they desperately wanted? Pepsi. In the 1970s, Pepsi became one of the first American products sold in the Soviet Union, thanks to a trade agreement. But because the ruble wasn't convertible to dollars, the Soviets had to barter. At first, they traded vodka for Pepsi syrup. But by the late 1980s, the deal got much weirder. In 1989, the Soviet Union struck a deal to trade Pepsi 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer, all decommissioned but still formidable, for Pepsi products. For a brief moment in history, Pepsi owned the world's 6th largest navy. Of course, the company had no use for warships. The vessels were quickly sold for scrap. But the bizarre transaction remains one of the strangest examples of Cold War economics. As Pepsi's CEO reportedly joked to a U.S. official, "We're disarming the Soviet Union faster than you are." The Battle of the Frogs in 1754, residents of Windham, Connecticut, were jolted awake by a terrifying sound. It was the middle of the night, and they thought the town was under attack. The noises, groaning, croaking, screeching, seemed to come from all around. Panic spread. Some believed it was an Indian raid. Others feared it was Judgment Day. Armed with muskets, men ran into the streets, firing at shadows and bracing for battle. But when morning came, the truth was revealed. The town had not been invaded. Instead, a nearby pond of bullfrogs had experienced a mass die-off, and the croaking of the survivors had echoed so loudly across the night that townspeople mistook it for the sounds of battle. Hundreds of dead frogs were found floating in the water. The incident became known as the Battle of the Frogs, and while embarrassing, it became a beloved local legend, reminding us how fear can turn even frogs into an army. The Bell Witch Haunting, 1817-1821. One of America's most famous and bizarre hauntings took place in Adams, Tennessee, in the early 19th century. The Bell family began experiencing strange phenomena in 1817. It started with knocking sounds on the walls of their log cabin, then escalated to invisible forces, pulling at bed covers, scratching sounds, and even physical attacks. The entity, which came to be known as the Bell Witch, reportedly spoke in a disembodied voice, sang hymns, quoted scripture, and even carried on conversations. Some claimed it could shapeshift into animals. Others said it foretold the future. The witch seemed particularly hostile toward John Bell, the head of the family. After years of torment, Bell fell ill and died in 1820. Some accounts say the witch took credit for poisoning him. Even future President Andrew Jackson is said to have visited the Bell home during the haunting. According to legend, his carriage was stopped by the witch's power, and his men refused to continue. To this day, the Bell Witch remains one of America's most chilling folklore tales, half ghost story, half legend, but all bizarre. The Philadelphia Experiment, 1943. During World War II, the U.S. Navy was supposedly working on a new kind of technology, an invisibility cloak for ships. According to conspiracy lore, in 1943, the destroyer escort USS Eldridge was fitted with experimental equipment in Philadelphia. The goal was to make the ship invisible to radar. But the legend goes much further. Witnesses claimed that not only did the ship vanish from sight, it teleported to Norfolk, Virginia, before reappearing in Philadelphia. Sailors, according to the story, suffered horrific consequences. Some were fused into the metal of the ship. Others went mad. Some vanished entirely. The Navy has always denied the experiment ever took place, calling it a hoax fueled by misinterpretations of real research into degaussing, a process to make ships less detectable to magnetic mines. Still, the Philadelphia Experiment lives on as one of America's strangest conspiracy theories, blurring the line between science fiction and hidden history. The Kentucky Meat Shower, 1876. On March 3, 1876, residents of Bath County, Kentucky were stunned when chunks of raw meat began falling from the sky. Yes, meat. For several minutes, strips of red flesh, some as large as 4 inches, rained down over a farm. Witnesses described it as looking like beef or mutton. Curious locals even tasted it. Scientists later suggested the meat was actually regurgitated by vultures, who often disgorge their stomach contents while flying. The explanation makes sense, but it doesn't erase the sheer bizarreness of standing in a field while meat rains from the heavens. The Kentucky Meat Shower remains one of the strangest unexplained events in American history. The Day America nuked itself, the Mars Bluff Incident, 1958. On March 11, 1958, a U.S. Air Force B-47 bomber was flying over Mars Bluff, South Carolina, when disaster struck. The plane accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb. Thankfully, the bomb's nuclear core was not armed, so it didn't trigger a nuclear explosion. But the conventional explosives did detonate, creating a massive crater, destroying a family's home and injuring 6 people. Imagine stepping outside your house one day, only to find out the U.S. military has dropped an atomic bomb on your backyard. It was one of several broken arrow incidents during the Cold War, reminding us just how close America came to nuclear disaster, not in battle, but by accident. And there you have it, America's most bizarre historical events you've probably never heard of. From emperors without kingdoms, to floods of molasses, from pigs that nearly started wars, to soda companies with navies. History is filled with stories so strange they sound made up. But each one of these tales is very real. They remind us that history isn't just about presidents, wars, and dates. It's about people. People who made strange choices, lived through freak accidents, or told stories so weird that they've survived for centuries. So the next time you think history is boring, remember, somewhere in the archives lies a story about meat falling from the sky, or a man being saluted as emperor without ever being crowned. If you enjoyed this journey through the weird side of America's past, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more history and mystery, and share this video with a friend who loves strange stories. Because in history, the truth is often stranger than fiction. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep exploring the unbelievable past.